I'm Ryan McCaig, and like Theo said, I'm a specialist solutions architect at AWS, focused on media and entertainment. And over the past 2.5 years, I've worked with customers like MGM Studios to migrate their media supply chains to or build wholly new media supply chain functionality in AWS. I want to start the conversation today with a definition for media supply chain. I think media supply chain means different things to different people. Maybe you're in the ingest side of supply chain, creating content, or you're in the distribution side of supply chain, distributing content. This is a definition we came up with at AWS for media supply chain, really allowing customers to focus on their core business through the automation, orchestration, and integration of different domain areas of functionality across the supply chain. And I'll talk about two definitions here. So one, what you see represented on screen here, you've got these different domain areas of functionality. So for example, you've got capture, ingest, media processing capabilities, delivery and distribution, and finally archive. And so media supply chain is focused on this horizontal automation, integration, and orchestration across that supply chain. Secondly, within a domain, media supply chain is focused on automating vertically. And what do I mean by vertically? So if we take, for example, that media processing domain, and we look at, let's say, a QC example where we have a multi-step process that might have a metadata extraction and a technical validation and maybe a more intense QC with an automated third-party tool. We can automate all those steps and we have a wholly automated QC function. So now that we've got past our definition, I want to talk a little bit about the services that are applicable to media supply chain. When I've worked with customers on migrating their media supply chains to AWS, a couple business drivers come up for doing so. One is scale. So whether you're a customer that's maybe launching a new streaming channel and you need to scale your infrastructure to meet that demand, or you're a distribution customer who now has many more outlets and endpoints to deliver to, you need to scale up to do that. Also in the scale area is elasticity. So maybe you're running like a pop-up channel and you need to scale up for that for a short period of time and then scale back down. Customers looking to leverage cloud, AWS Cloud elasticity and scale for that. Secondly is resilience and redundancy. So maybe some of your critical applications for media supply chain are running in a single data center and you're looking to add some resiliency there. Or your critical media assets are on a single piece of storage with not a whole lot of redundancy, and if they're lost, then that's core to your business. And last is just that focus on core business of media. I hear from a lot of customers, we want to be able to focus on improving our core business and not on infrastructure management. And so that's the theme you'll see with some of these services I presented here on screen today. These are serverless and managed services from AWS. And what I mean by that is you as the customer benefits from AWS managing underlying infrastructure. So for example, you'll see AWS Elemental Media Convert up there. That's our managed transcode service and one of our media entertainment focused services in AWS. You worry about submitting your transcode job to that service. We handle the underlying scaling, server management, patching, all that infrastructure, that undifferentiated heavy lifting gets offloaded to AWS. Another example in the storage space, Amazon S3. Highly durable, highly available, and infinitely scalable. So if you consider traditional storage needs on-prem, where you need to buy and provision new storage, configure it, manage it, maintain it over time, Amazon S3 allows you to store your media assets and scale infinitely and only pay for what you use. Finally, as we know, integration and orchestration are critical to media supply chain, so I want to direct your attention down to the bottom of this slide and call out one service in particular, AWS step functions. So if I go back to my QC example, a multi-step process where the input of my one step is the output of my previous step, AWS step functions is a great tool to allow you to string out these comprehensive workflows in AWS. And again, that's going to be a serverless and managed service from AWS where you worry about defining and running your workflows. We handle the infrastructure management. Next, I want to focus your attention on two critical aspects of supply chain, APIs and events. And so we saw on the last slide, Amazon API Gateway and Amazon Event Bridge, which are two services that line up to these functions. The power of APIs in the supply chain is that we're able to wrap up complex functionality and expose it to other areas of the supply chain so that we can decouple different functions in our supply chain and then automate between them. So for example, transcode use case. If I'm the consumer of a transcode service, I might just be interested in telling you what is my media file and what format do I want to transcode to. But as the producer of a transcode service, I may need to use AWS Elemental Media Convert under the hood. Maybe I need to use Dolby Hybrid or Telestream, multiple transcode engines to do the job that I'm trying to do. But I can wrap that complexity up and expose a simple endpoint to my consumers of that service. So in that way, APIs become very valuable in our media supply chain. Second are events. And what I mean by events is, if you think about media supply chain, a lot of activity in the supply chain, if not all activity, is actually an event that occurs. So whether you have a license sale or a media asset lands on a piece of storage, you want to take that event and use that event to connect to other functions in your supply chain. So for example, media asset gets ingested, you publish an event to an event bus, your transcode service, your QC service pick up on that event and do their activity in a decoupled yet orchestrated and automated way. And so that's, again, these two services that support these critical aspects of the supply chain are Amazon API Gateway and Amazon Event Bridge. And again, these are both fully managed services from AWS, where you're just worrying about defining and creating your workflows and your APIs, and we handle the underlying infrastructure management. The last service area I want to talk to you about real quickly is storage. So media supply chain is focused on two aspects of storage. Obviously the storage of media assets themselves, and if you look at Amazon S3, like I said, we have customers who have migrated multi-petabyte archives and continue to migrate multi-petabytes amounts of content to Amazon S3 to take care of that, to benefit from that durability, scalability, and resiliency of Amazon S3. And we're also concerned with metadata storage. So maybe you have metadata that gives you context about your media assets stored in Amazon S3, and you want to store that in a more structured way. We have many different database formats to help you do that. And the theme you'll see on this slide is that AWS is not asking our customers to adopt a one-size-fits-all philosophy. With Amazon S3, you have 6 different object storage classes, depending on whether your needs are hot storage or cold storage. You want to save some money with your archives, for example. And same story with the databases, 9 different database types to fit your media supply chain application needs. So now that we've covered some of the services, I want to leave you with, how do I get started with media supply chain AWS, or how do I accelerate my journey with media supply chain? And I'll bring your attention to 2 things. First, AWS solutions. These are reference pieces of code or reference architectures that we've made available to you. And they combine a lot of the services that we've talked about today into operational workflows. So for example, if you're on the ingest side of media supply chain and you're looking for a tool that uploads content to Amazon S3 and does some automated metadata extraction with AI ML tools like Amazon Recognition, Media to Cloud is a great solution to look at. Or maybe you're on the distribution end of supply chain and you're wondering, is there a cost-effective and efficient way for me to take the media content in my Amazon S3 bucket and send it to someone else's S3 bucket? Media Exchange is a great solution in that space. Finally, I want to touch on our partner network. We have over 80 media entertainment, media supply chain specific focused partners in our network. And so whether you need high-speed file transfer, metadata management, media asset management, data analytics, QC tools, there's likely a partner out there or partners to fit your needs. So with that, I want to hand it off to Doug Rousseau, CTO of MGM, to talk about how they put services, solutions, and partners to work for their media supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. You guys hear me okay? Terrific. This is a very great journey that we have been on, and I'm super excited to share it with you. But I want to just kind of start with orienting you basically to the monetization model in media and entertainment. And this one is a very highly simplified version, right? It really is just acquisition of content or content production, the notion that you monetize it, sales, that you distribute it, and that you play it out to your customers, and that you're paid appropriately for the content. So when we started our journey at MGM, we actually went through our business and we looked at these monetization processes and we kind of broke them down functionally. So again, just from a high level functionally, you have rights and you have to manage rights for your content, right? You have to calculate and manage the availability of that content when you sell it. And avails, by the way, is just very simple. It's what do I have the rights to, what I've already sold the rights for, and that collision check in the middle there means I still have things I can sell. Then of course you have to manage all these contracts, you have to have the content, you fulfill the content. As Ryan said, it has to go out in particular formats based on who's licensing it. So all that fulfillment. and of course, managing and all the metadata and managing all those assets. And so we really broke down MGM Studios in this fashion and grouped on our journey to kind of key principal areas. So rights and avails management, sales management and planning, work order management, you can see. And the reason we grouped it in this fashion was typically what you hear from in a supply chain is not concept to consumer, but content to consumer. So a lot of focus in a media supply chain is around assets, it's around ingesting and transcoding and delivery. We went upstream and looked at business services because the reality is automation and integration means if I understand what I have sold, well, that ought to define the available window for somebody to come get content. That ought to define and trigger the events that say, hey, this content has to be ready for this exhibitor at this particular time. And I think that's what's unique about MGM's supply chain approach. And so when we analyzed that at MGM, we found a lot of problems. 9,000 spreadsheets to manage a lot of this function. Disparate systems, some legacy systems, call it islands of automation, so nothing really communicating to each other. And so metadata elements, title elements, all kind of being reproduced and put into Excel and handed off, step to step to step. Extremely painful. So that was what we were trying to solve for. So we got in a room, we went to a whiteboard, and we said, what does a full end-to-end concept to consumer media supply chain look like? And this is a real picture of our whiteboard. And you can see the date up there, 5/10 of 2019. That's when we started this journey. And we took this conceptual architecture and turned it into something more manageable. A business reference model that has all those functions and features. This is just the top level on the upper part of this placard. And then on the bottom level, a more detailed relationship, functional conceptual architecture to a set of services. And then we went to NAB, we went around shopping, we established our architectural tenants, we chose a full cloud implementation with Amazon, and so all of our vendor partners and everything we did had to meet and match that architectural vision. So this is literally our new product catalog, if you will, that is a representation of our media supply chain. Now, here's what I'm gonna do as I walk you through this today, and with my colleague Jin-Soo Wang, who's gonna also take you through some elements. I'm gonna tell a story of a fictional title called Peter's War. This fictional title is how we're gonna kind of show you how a concept was pitched to us, and we're gonna walk you through how Peter's War went through this entire supply chain into servicing, delivery, and play out in our Epics Now platform. Fictional title, don't go looking for it. But it was a super hit. Anyway, as we go through this, we're just gonna follow this journey through these 8 major functions in the journey of Peter's War. So I'll turn it over to Jin-Soo Wang, and I'll be back in a bit.
Thank you, Doug. So when we talk about the end-to-end content lifecycle, everything starts from how we get the contents in, right? There are many different ways. Either you do a library acquisition, you go to a film festival and identify the potential target, or you do, start from, a writer submits some, script to you, and you go through the green lighting process, you do the co-production process, eventually it becomes your IP. So if we look at this diagram, what we use to manage the pre-IP, basically the content acquisition process is Salesforce. So you can see there are many things being managed in Salesforce, and here we're gonna focus on pre-IP acquisition. So if you're a writer, you can submit your script through Salesforce UI. We manage if a Salesforce script submission goes through the green lighting process, and co-development is part of the process being managed in Salesforce. And as part of the enrichment development process, we have to manage the talent and attach the talent to different projects. And then the business affairs, legal affairs is gonna track the options and modify and tracking all different talent contracts and get notifications. And then the green lighting and the production process, all the production key dates, the status of different episodes and which seasons are being produced, it's all managed in Salesforce. So the whole IP acquisition process is in Salesforce. So this is a sample screen of incoming submission. So you can see here we track different status of the submission, and we track like all different informations around the submission. And we use a lot of technology integrations. So for example, the log line, we have a speech to text, and we integrate the Salesforce platform with Box so that when you submit an attachment, it's traceable, it's searchable, and you can open up from Salesforce front end, and the team can review the submission and make decisions. And eventually it will become either, we pass on the opportunity, or we believe this is a good project and we're gonna convert it to the next step.
Of course it was good, I wrote it.
That's right. So once it goes into the development process, now you're gonna manage, attaching different talent, negotiating the talent contract, and the business legal affairs will be involved. So you start tracking the different things, and you're gonna pitch it to different networks. So here you can see for Peter's War, there's the log line, there's the different things we track. And eventually, if it goes through the green lighting process, it becomes a production project. That's what we call the current. So current means, now for Peter's War, we have different days to track, right? And you want to know when you are really ready to sell the project. That will means it's gonna flow down into our title rights system, and it will become our IP, and it will be visible to our sales team. And the sales team can then pick it up and start the sales process. Here is a high-level architecture of Salesforce. So the idea is, we don't use Salesforce just for sales, or we don't use Salesforce just for pre-IP. This is a part of an ecosystem. So you can see all the objects are being shared across the board, and you have different components of the Salesforce leveraging the same objects, so that you don't have to do integration between different systems. It's one ecosystem. So everything is being shared, and the information can go back and forth between different application level products. And then we use Workato as integration layer, and we integrate with a lot of AWS native service. So here is just a highlight of, for Salesforce implementation, what AWS service we are integrating with. Now, once we go through the content acquisition process, now we know, driven by certain key dates of the production, we know Peter's War is gonna coming in as a, IP. So here we use track to manage all the titles and the incoming IP and the rights. And the track stands for title, rights, avails, and contract. So we will talk about avails and contract later. But here, as part of the IP title management process, we manage IP intake, which means in Salesforce, once the titles pass certain status, it's gonna flow into Salesforce, flow into track. And in track, we go through all the legal clearance. Certain music is need to be cleared in certain country. And then there's the title hierarchy definition. If it's a film, there's a different hierarchy compared to if it's a scripted or unscripted TV product. And you define the title hierarchy, all the title metadata and the legal approval process is being managed in track. And then we define the rights tree. So here is the sample screen of the title input screen. So you can see, we define the title, and there are like different episodes of the first season of Peter's War, and you manage different metadata fields, and then you can attach any attachment if needed, and you can enrich the title metadata here. And then when you talk about the rights, there are different rights dimensions. There's territory, there's media, there's language. So here you can expand the different title dimension, rights dimension, and you can decide what is the rights in process. So for Peter's War, this is a worldwide rights because we, MGM developed it and it's our own product. But for certain acquisitions, we may only acquire the US rights. Then here you will see different territory and the language dimension of the rights. And this is I'm not gonna go through every single box. Feel free to take a photo if you want. But here's the track and AWS integration hierarchy. And these are the AWS native services we use. We will take questions after the presentation. So now we go through the rights and the title management process. We are ready to sell the titles. So it goes back into the Salesforce system. So now we are managing the sales opportunity and the different aspects of sales process. So you can see we have release planning, which means there are different dates of a title. There are different windows. There's a PWAD window. If it's a theatrical product, there's a theatrical window. There's a broadcast window for different territory. So that release planning, release calendar is being managed in Salesforce. And then as part of the sales management, leads will come in and we create opportunities and we go through the deal approval process. If it's a new sales, if it's a new customer, the customer needs to be onboarded. We need to go through the background check and the internal approval process. The partner onboarding, there is an external facing partner self-onboarding platform where the partners can go in and populate their information, and we have internal process to approve the customer. And everything is driven by notification. There's workflow defined, and there's the in-app collaboration tool as part of the Salesforce platform. So this is a new partner onboarding external facing interface. So a customer will receive an email, a potential customer, and they come in and they go through this process. You can see what has been populated is checked, and these are to be populated. And once they provide all information, we have the internal user interface where they manage the different levels of approvals to run the background check and the financial check, and eventually the potential customer will become our real customer or partner. And this is a screen of the opportunity management. So you can see here we want to sell Peter's War, and this is the deal information, kind of the profile screen. And it's gonna go through different processes for the entire end-to-end sales process. And you can see all the histories are being tracked here. And once a deal memo opportunity has been created, there will be a different approval process. So here is the approval workflow where you can see different teams. So we have the contract servicing team, there's the finance team, there's the sales planning review, there's the business affairs. So all different departments are being involved. And here you can see who has already approved and is pending whose approval. And some of these steps can be in parallel, and some of those can be sequential. And as a sales regional manager or sales head, you want to see what you have in the pipeline, right? You want to see the upcoming opportunities, what's the probability of win. So here is the dashboard for Peter's War. You can see these are different opportunities at different pipeline status, and then the sales lead can make decisions around what's the next sales strategy, what's the next big push if we want to sell to certain territory or certain market. So in the meanwhile, while the sales team is working on different opportunities, the marketing team are working on preparing the marketing materials and get it ready for delivery and supporting our customers. So I'm going to hand over to Doug to present the marketing delivery.
Okay, thank you, Jinsu. Yes, it is dry in here. All right, so what you've seen Peter's War come in as a script submission. Company liked it. They said, all right, let's proceed. They put it into development. Some things are happening called production. So I'm gonna not go through that entire production process, but know that we'll cover how some of these assets are coming in and what's happening from the production side. And now we've got the sales team who's now really gonna try to sell this thing. In order to sell it, right, we've got to put together a great story. We've got to have some episodes cut and we have to show them to folks. We've got to have some other materials, trailers, other artwork and so forth. So we have an area of our system, and let me come back in here, really two of them. One is called Iconic and the other one is called Roar. So Iconic is our production asset management system. So think about it like this. As editors and production folks are going through and they're shooting and they're getting dailies and they're getting, they may be even taking stills from on set. That material is coming into the production asset management system as a centralized repository for the sharing of those assets. Now in Iconic, and I'll show you a screenshot here in a second, that production asset management system has plugins for the Avids, for editors in Avids, for editors in Adobe Premiere, After Effects, and so forth. So production processes are working in their normal tooling, and they're able to check in and check out assets within Iconic. And when creative and other editors are doing cut downs and doing promos and other materials, that is also then flowing into Iconic. So in the case of Peter's War, you can see that some assets have been created, there's some metadata elements captured, and we'll talk about metadata as it flows through this whole system as well, not just technical metadata, but descriptive metadata as well. So Iconic being built on and leveraging these Amazon services means these assets are being housed in Object Store, S3, and they're leveraged across other use cases within the other systems. So central repository. Now, in terms of taking those assets and actually getting them out to clients so that the salespeople are making deals, we have Roar. There are a number of different applications in Roar. But think of Roar really as a marketing delivery service. So not only does it allow us to stream content from the library securely, but it also allows us to do screeners and other things specific to folks that have been identified as buyers and potential buyers for Peter's War. So when you log in, and here's a sample login, you see all of the things as a marketer that you may be entitled to. So it's not just Peter's War, but as a potential licensee, hey, they've already got a bunch of titles within Roar and they can see them here. In this case, they can drill into Peter's War and start looking at and grabbing artifacts related to Peter's War. So not only are the marketers then pushing for selling the titles, but it also allows their potential customers to actually jump in, watch a couple episodes, and go, oh, wow, I'm really interested in that. I think I want to cut a deal and buy it. This is the Roar and, again, AWS services. Grab your cameras, it's an eye chart. But there are, again, kind of key principles and key services that underlie this entire architecture. Right? So in this case, S3 storage for these artifacts. We're using open search services so that you can search the catalog, number of different capabilities being supported by key Amazon media services. All right, so what we've noticed here in this entire journey is you're seeing metadata and common metadata used throughout this entire process. And it literally begins at that IP acquisition when there's a synopsis written. That synopsis can go through a number of different transformations and end up as a synopsis being used in an EPG, for example, when a title's sold. So metadata is a very important underlying service that is standing up and referenced by a whole host of the other products in this architecture. We selected Fabric for our metadata service, and we use that both for descriptive metadata. We also use it for basically subscribing to third-party providers for service, IMDb, grace note. In other words, it's an enrichment tool. So you can get a very robust set of enrichment elements within that metadata environment. But we also connect it to our Connect system, our asset manager content fulfillment and delivery system, because it also has technical metadata. So what this does is it provides a really nice single pane of glass for the organization to look through and see every title within our library and very key important facts about those titles. So for example, here's just a shot of Peter's War as it exists inside of Fabric. And you can see there's a number of different tabs that contain various different elements, cast and crew, awards, a whole host of descriptors and other elements, as well as artwork. And in fact, we also have proxy resolution for the series so that when you're inside the interface, you can play out a proxy of an episode or of a feature. So this is just a screenshot of underlying elements inside of Iconic, so you can browse them and see various artwork, as well as any other video or other artifacts. Built native AWS services. The key ones that we leverage across the system here are the title catalog that's published across the company, as well as a simple queuing service, the S3 storage environment, notification services for events, a host of services. All right, so that's metadata. Now that we have a lot of interested parties, they've seen screeners, they've gotten a taste for Peter's War, we've got buyers. So it's time to go to contract with those buyers for Peter's War. So I'm going to hand it back to Jin Su, and she's going to take you through the contract process for closing the deal.
So now we are back into track. So when we have a deal, an opportunity all approved and we know it's mature enough and now we are ready to sign a contract, Salesforce will send the data into track. Now track is gonna start from there to manage the contract, run any avails calculations, and run contract financials. So contract intake is basically an automated process where Salesforce will send the contract headers, the terms information into track, and then our contract servicing team will populate additional financial details, like revenue recognition, different payment dates, additional terms, and the legal team, the finance team will all be working in the system. Now, the avails calculation, this is how we define our ecosystem. So it looks like avails calculation is sitting in track, but it's a microservice. So from sales process, if a sales wants to run the quick check of whether the title is available for sale, they can call through the integration layer the microservice and get the result in Salesforce. So the idea behind this is if you are a user, you sit in your system and the service is all available to you. You don't have to go from Salesforce to track to get your avails. It's basically transparent to you. You think you are working in one system, but behind the scene, there are a lot of integrations and real-time calling going on. We manage the approval workflow for contract. If it's, we have different kind of deals, right? There's the royalty-based, there's the licensing-based. If a statement that needs to be processed, this system also does the statement processing. The billing and the invoicing process is managed in track. All the revenue recognition, either triggered by dates or triggered by certain events, are all managed in track. So here a screen of the avails check. So you input different rights dimensions and you input Peter's War, and then you get your result whether the title Peter's War is available to sell for your targeted customer. And we look at this before. So now we sign the contract and we are ready to deliver. There are delivery obligations involved. And as part of a delivery, when we say delivery, there are different components involved. From contract to servicing, there is the component of, do I have all the materials ready? Do I need to order a different language file? Is there localization or mastering requirement? Should I send this work order to our internal capability, or do we send it to external vendor? So that's what we call the work order management system, Studio Hub. And then there's the real fulfillment of the contract, of the delivery. So the internal capability, the product is called Connect. And the RAW is, if for certain customers, they are ready to take what we have, and they want to go to our portal to download the content we have, they can do it from RAW. So now I'm going to talk about Studio Hub. So Studio Hub is a platform that can be used by the internal team and also the external customers or external vendors. So the customers can go through it's integrated with Salesforce. So the Salesforce customer self-onboarding portal, as part of the self-onboarding, there is the technical metadata requirements being provided by the customer. So basically your customer profile, the metadata profile, the packaging requirement, the delivery requirement is all managed through the customer self-onboarding process. And then there's an internal portal for our internal delivery team to review the customer profile, test it, and identify whether we have any missing metadata, and wrap everything up into a work order and make a decision on, do we have the internal capability to deliver it? Do we have all the source material ready? Or do we need to do a localization for certain order? So this is an example of this is a very small, but basically this is an inventory search. So inventory search is a microservice where any application can call. It's basically looking for this delivery obligation. Do we have all the source material? So here you can see we have season 1. We have season 1, episode 1. We have the video and the closed caption we need. But for episode 2 and 3, we don't really. So we are still waiting for the materials to become available. And once you have all the materials available, you can create the system will automatically create a work order. And in one work order, depending on what type of contract it is, there can be 100 titles, there can be 1 title, and there can be different seasons and episodes in it. So here you can see for Peter's War, we have 10 episodes under season 1, and these are the delivery requirements. And this is a work order, and the system is gonna automatically, because now we have all the source materials, so the system is gonna automatically push it into Connect for delivery. And this is Studio Hub system architecture, and you can see everything is being managed as microservices, and there's API enabled, so any other systems can call it. And these are the AWS native services we use. And Doug is gonna talk about Connect.
Okay. Thank you, Jinsu. All right, it's sold. Now we have to fulfill orders. So one of the most important components we have here, which I talked about earlier, right, typically is that content to consumer piece. So we have a solution called Connect. You can see there's a lot of different services that are provided here, but it essentially, not just from an asset management perspective and lifecycle management, by the way, with a large library, you don't necessarily want to have all assets on expensive storage. You may want to have it tiered down into a lower cost like Glacier, and then only have to retrieve it when it's ready for fulfillment or another service or another sale. But the other thing that Connect does is it really provides a content engineer and content operators to really provide a robust view for quality control, QC checks. It can do all of the kind of frame accurate scrubbing necessary to ensure that, say, a dub track lines up properly. So here's a shot of Peter's War in the operator's console. You can see a number of different features and functions available to them, least of not which, that is a little blurry. Title details, technical media details on the asset, and by the way, those technical media details are pushed back into the metadata asset management system. So that metadata service, like I said, has both descriptive and technical metadata. But here from a QC operator's control, they can do frame level scrubbing. They can make sure that a subtitle track appropriately lines up and make any adjustments and make sure it's good to go. This is another screenshot of the title navigator. So there are various aspects associated with Peter's War. So there's a number of different assets that are associated here, and the content operators can grab the appropriate assets, package them up, and send it for delivery. Connect is entirely native AWS services. And again, as I said, we chose that as an architecture because all of these services require that level of interoperation. I'll highlight a couple of key ones here, but again, you can see event functions, Lambda functions for serverless, which is terrific because it scales. You definitely don't want to have all of this horsepower running all the time. So we trigger it through Lambda functions when we need certain services, like the Hybrid encoding, for example. Now that the titles are available and they've been packaged, we do a couple of different things. We can do a white glove service delivery, which means we will go ahead and push, if you're an Aspera endpoint, we can go ahead and deliver the content via an Aspera endpoint. We have and are working through the rest of this year to onboard about 1,500 different endpoints we have around the globe. But the other thing that you can do is you can actually go in for self-service. So for example, I showed you the ROAR screen before. As a content licensee, you also can come into ROAR and you can grab and download those assets at your convenience. You need them, more than 45 days in advance. As long as they're available, you log into the portal and all your assets are available for you to package up, grab, and take with you. This provides a status of various aspects of that title package. So in this case, we've had some downloaded already, some are waiting and pending that download, but this is entirely a self-service delivery for those content operators that want to grab the content themselves. So not only is it a white glove service and content delivery, and you've seen Peter's War come all the way through the channel, but one of the other really compelling final solutions in here is how does that content then make it out on air? So at MGM, we have a premium subscription brand called Epix. Epix is domestic only. Let me highlight here. The tech stack for Epix, domestic only. It is a premium subscription carried on 300 MVPDs. It was built entirely on AWS services as far back as 2012. So before we had the supply chain in place, in order to get content out on Epix, you had to take metadata off of a spreadsheet and enter it manually into their CMS system. You had to physically go in and get an asset and download it and encode it for the spec that you wanted for your platform. It was incredibly difficult to make fast turnarounds for things like NFL Weekly, where you have a live show and you want it out on your platform in low turnaround time. So really, really difficult to scale this. Now that they're live and the supply chain is there, all of that manual process has gone away entirely. So when it is scheduled and ready to air on Epix, the metadata and the content flows automatically into the CMS. It's verified and validated, and it is ready for display on, for example, 10-foot screen, or any of the applications in the Epix and Epix Now platform, Android mobile devices, Apple TV, of course, Amazon Fire TV, and a whole host of platforms that are supported. So that is truly an end-to-end content to consumer media supply chain, all entirely in the cloud and all entirely built with custom software, packaged vendor software, and a host of microservices sitting in between. Sorry, just give you a shot. This is the actual Epix tech stack, entirely AWS services. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.